Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fourth Man In. I'm Dan, and this is episode number 6. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most of us, if not all of us, at some point in our lives have failed at something. Or maybe not just something, failed repeatedly at trying to be something or do something, and it just didn't work out the way we thought. And it failed. The outcome was not what we expected. But that's not really what we're talking about in this video today. We're talking about actually feeling like a failure. And failing at something is not the same as feeling like a failure in life. You know, there's a lot of variables that can come into play when you say that you are feeling like a failure. This world today will tell you if you don't have a certain title or tag, if you've never reached a certain level of achievement, if you don't have X amount of money in the bank, if people don't know who you are, it's this, it's that, and everything else. And if you don't have all these things, if you don't have the right house or live in the right place, that you're a failure somehow. And that's not true at all. But I do want to focus on today because I have struggled with this battle myself for years, and that is just feeling like a failure, feeling like you never really accomplished what you were supposed to, or get to that place you were supposed to be at, or you just really disappointed some people, disappointed yourself, and that's a real battle. And as we start this episode today, if you're facing that and if you feel that way about yourself, I just want you to know that we have a common enemy. And not trying to preach at you, but that common enemy is the devil. And he wants to do nothing more than get in that space between your ears. That is his most effective battleground, and make you think that somehow, some way, you're a failure. You have miserably failed at life, and that's all you will ever be. But I want to tell you before we even get too far that that is not true. That God is real, God loves you, and he has a plan for your life, and that's the whole purpose for the Fourth Man In channel, to let you know that even during your most difficult battle, that even arguably on the worst day of your life, that God is still with you. Now, we've mentioned Peter before. I think it was the first episode. No, maybe it was the second or third. Anyway, on forgiving yourself. And because I think Peter had this battle as well. But if you read about Simon Peter, who else was with the Lord that did as much as Peter did? Peter was involved in some of the most amazing miracles that took place in the New Testament. There were times when he was with the Lord that he got to participate in some things that no one else did. That was absolutely incredible. Remember, it was Peter who walked on the water. Now, all the disciples were in the boat. They all had the same opportunity that Peter did. They all should have jumped out of that boat when Jesus said, "Come on to me," in the middle of the storm. You know the story. But they didn't. Peter was the only one who got out. And I've often wondered, the Bible doesn't say, but I've often wondered what conversation was going on in the boat. And I'm not trying to get off track. I am trying to make a point here. Did any of them say, "Hey, Peter, don't do this, man. It's not going to work. There's a storm. You're going to fall. You're going to drown. You can't swim. You're this, you're that"? Don't know for sure. But I think some of them, out of the others that were there, had to have said some negative things to him. Don't do this because it's going to fail, right? It's not going to end well. To me, Peter blew that off because he trusted the Lord more than what his friends in the boat were telling him to do or not to do. And of course, you know the story. But anyway, he was the only one that got out. Everybody else had the same opportunity. Only Peter saw it through. So Peter's involved in these things in Scripture that to me just make him a superhero. Now, who was this guy? Well, we know that he was a fisherman. He was a business owner. So you know how fishermen are about their boats. He probably loved his boat, man. Maybe he had a fleet of boat. He had some guys that worked for him. He's successful, but I also think he's a tough guy. You know, I don't see Peter as this polished businessman. I think he's just a rough and tumble kind of dude who loved to fish, loved his family, loved his business, loved what he was doing in life, and just saw him being a fisherman until his last breath. It was who he was. It was what he did. But we also know that after Peter gave his heart to the Lord and started following Christ, that he still had some issues. Brother still had some issues. Seems like he was always sticking his foot in his mouth. Seems like he was always saying something that he shouldn't say. He was rebuked by the Lord. And of course, one of my favorite flaws of Peter, brother tried to cut somebody's head off. We've probably all been there at some point in our life. But anyway, we'll talk about that some other day. And so Peter, even after he's walking with the Lord, he's not perfect. He's got some issues. Doing the best that he can, but he still has some flaws. You know what? I don't care who you are. We've got flaws. We all have issues. But I want to talk about Peter today in this episode where we're discussing failing and feeling like a failure. Because the Bible is full of stories of people who have failed or who did fail that still went on to do amazing things. Just Peter's story may be my personal favorite because it's so painful, but yet also so revealing. It was just before Christ was crucified on the cross that the Lord told Peter, he said, hey, you know what? You're going to deny me. And of course, Peter said, hey, I never will. I'm your boy. I'm the guy that got out and walked on the water to you. Remember, nobody else did. I've been with you these last 3.5 years like nobody else has been. I've been with you. I have been your ride or die. And Jesus said, well, before this night's over, you're going to deny me not once, not twice, but 3 times. Peter's like, no, that's never going to happen. But as this story plays out and they come to get the Lord and they take him away, Peter follows along. And of course, you know how this goes. He finds himself in the crowd that has now gathered of people wanting to see what's going on and why Jesus has been taken into custody and what they're going to do with him now. And people start to notice that Simon Peter is there. People would, will, and should notice when you've been with the Lord, flaws and all. So they know who Peter is, and just people randomly start saying, hey man, you're one of his disciples, right? We don't know your name, but we know who you are, and you've been with Jesus, right? And what Peter does, he doesn't just say, not me. He doesn't just say, no, I have no clue who you all are. I'm just trying to get home, right? He absolutely pops a fuse, blows a gasket, right? He goes out of his way to try to convince these people that he's not who they think he is, right? And if you really study this, not only does he raise his voice, he's screaming, he's cursing, he's maybe pointing, shaking his fist. That is not me. He's completely just lost his mind, screaming, trying to convince them, hey man, that's not me. And he does it not once, not twice, but 3 times. And instantly, at the end of the 3rd time, he remembers what the Lord had said. And here's the point that's bringing me to my focus. The Bible says that Peter, in that moment, wept bitterly. Now, this wasn't a man who I think would have been a crier. He is a tough guy. He has been in some terrible storms, seen it, been there, done that, got the shirt. Peter's not a crier. That's not who he is. He's a tough dude. And he's weeping bitterly. Why is he crying? Why is he weeping? That's different than crying. Why is he weeping? I don't think that he's weeping because he's like, man, this is just a bad day, and I'm worried about what's going to happen to the Lord. No, he was a broken mess, realizing that the Lord was right, that he was completely wrong, and that in that moment he had failed miserably. And I can see people who knew who he was, not those he was trying to convince who he wasn't, but there had to be people in that crowd who actually 100% knew who Peter was. I could see those people going, whoa, Apparently you're not the person. Apparently you're not the guy that we thought you were. Wow. Wow. So there's a lot of different reactions, a lot of different emotions in that crowd. And Peter's weeping. He knows he's blown it. What's he thinking about? Is he thinking about, I'll never be able to relive this moment again? I can't take that back. I can't take back what I just said, what I just did. I wish I could, but I can't. I wish I could hit the reverse button and go back, but I can't do that. I just denied the Lord 3 times in emphatic fashion. There's people here who know me and they just saw this, they just heard this. What are they going to think about the things they've heard me preach and the things they've seen me do, and all of that just got washed down the drain. Anything good they had seen in me or heard from me before, they're not going to remember that. They're just going to remember this. They're going to remember this moment. They're going to remember this day. They're going to remember that moment of failure. So you've got these people in the crowd that know him that are going to remember this moment of failure. Oh my gosh, Peter, you're not the man we thought you were. And there's other people there who knew who he was, but they were happy this was happening. I have to think they were glad he was failing, right? Let me just throw this out. There are people, unfortunately, but this is true, in your life that will cheer you failing. They will root for your failure. When you're down in their mind, they may not be verbal about it, but they're going to hope you stay down. They don't want to see you get back up again, right? And that's a whole different episode we can talk about. There are people of faith who can be so insecure, they want to see you fall. They want to see you fail, right? And in their minds, they're thinking, knew it the whole time. I was right. So Peter is a broken mess. Now, it doesn't just stop there. Days pass before the resurrection. Bible doesn't say, but I've always wondered, during those days between the crucifixion and the resurrection, what's Peter doing? Is he telling his family what happened? Possibly. Did he go back and speak with some of the other disciples about what had happened? Okay, maybe not. But if he did, and I don't just see him wandering around aimlessly for 3 days hiding from people, what did his family think of him? When he said, hey, I need to tell you guys something. I failed the Lord miserably. If he talked to any disciples, when he went to the upper room, did he share with them in detail what had happened? Don't know. But if he did, and it stands to reason to me that he would have, what did they think about him? You did what? How in the world could you do that? I never would have done that. I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you said that, Peter. What were these people thinking about him? We know he was married. What's his wife thinking about him? What's his friends thinking about him? The people that he's known for years, what are they thinking about him? Did anybody ask him? Is anybody thinking, man, how in the world could you have done this? After all you've seen, all the places you've been, places you've spoke, places where you've prayed and healed people. Out of the Sea of Galilee, you walked on water. After going through all that, Peter, how could you do this? I just think he's just saying, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he ever gave any kind of a real answer. I don't even know if he really had one that he could give them other than I don't know what happened. I've made a huge mistake. I failed, and I feel like a failure. So days go by. With each passing day, I'm just guessing that the guilt and the shame had to be worse, just getting worse for Peter. He had to be thinking, my life moving forward is never going to be the same again. I guess I'll just go back to fishing or whatever. If anybody would even want to do business with me, I don't know. He had to be at night just laying in bed thinking about his future going, I don't even know if I have one. I don't even know if I have one. Where's my life go now? How often did he think, what was the Lord thinking? What's the Lord think now? If I ever see the Lord again, what's that conversation going to look like, going to sound like? But it wouldn't be long before he would find out exactly what that would look like and what that would sound like. Because after Christ rose from the dead, I love that one of the very first things the Lord does is go right to Peter. He tracks him down. He finds him. Why would he do that? Right? Did he have to? Nope. I think he absolutely knew how Peter was going to be feeling, and he loved him enough. He didn't want that to continue, right? I've got to go find Peter. I've got to let him know I love him, I forgive him, and everything is okay. And he tracks Peter down. He finds him. I just want to say, no matter what you have done, if you're watching this and you feel like you have failed or you feel like a failure, I want you to know, if you've confessed that to God, he forgives you, he loves you, and there's nothing he wouldn't do. He would go out of his way to let you know, hey, you know what, it's okay. It's okay. We're going to get through this together. And that's what this is about. When I've always wondered too, because the Bible doesn't say, when Peter sees the Lord walking up to him, in that moment, can you imagine the emotion that is just raging and rolling through Peter? I wonder if Peter tried to dodge him. I wonder if he tried to hide, right? Because the guilt and the shame. I wonder if Jesus called out to him and hollered out to him and motioned for him to come here. How did that scene play out? Man, I would like to know, right? But Jesus goes to him. And not once, not twice, but 3 times. You know the story. He says, feed my sheep. What is that about? What's he even saying? What is that? The Lord is letting Peter know, hey, it's okay. Why did he do it 3 times? Well, I've heard a lot of theories. I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but I've often wondered if every time the Lord would say something to Peter to reassure him, if Peter was going, yeah, Lord, but this and this, and then the Lord would say it again. Maybe Peter was like, no, I hear what you're saying, but you're not listening to what I did. I'm a failure. And then Jesus said it again. I don't know if that's what happened, but maybe it did. But Jesus spent time with Peter, making sure that he understood it's okay. You failed. And it's all right now. That's gone. It's behind you. It's over. Stop dwelling on it. Stop thinking about it. It doesn't define you, Peter. Let it go. I'm telling you now, eye to eye, I forgive you, and it's okay. We've got work to do. Let's get going. And of course, Peter changed forever. And when you read about what took place after that, after the ascension of the Lord, and Peter leading on the day of Pentecost and everything that took place with Simon Peter, after that moment of failure, you have to agree that his days after his failure and those dark days of his life, everything ahead of him was, I don't want to say far better, but in far overwhelming and in greater fashion was Peter used after his failure than before. Makes sense? I mean, he's doing miraculous things. He's traveling. In essence, he becomes the father of the church, if you will, as we know it, after a failure. After, I think, just hating himself, feeling miserable, losing countless friends, right? People turning on him. But Jesus changes everything. Now Peter's back on track. You know, as a man though, because this is the way that we are wired, even years later, I still wonder, because I do this, and I think guys do this, I still can see Peter going, how did I ever do that? What happened with me? Why didn't I listen to the Lord? Why did I do that? Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. It stands to reason. Maybe not that he's beating himself down, but I still think years down the road, before he himself was put to death, did he ever just mentally go back to that place and say, why? I wish I never would have done that. I shouldn't have said that. I should have listened. And I failed. chalk it up as a learning experience. And I think he did. So I love this story of Simon Peter, one of the greatest men of faith who ever walked the planet. Failed terribly, but got back up, and I think was better than he ever was before. Did he still have some flaws? Yeah, I'm sure he did, but he was better than he ever had been. You know, it's hard sometimes for us to be honest. We don't really want to be, and sometimes we will carry shame and guilt and burdens, maybe for lack of a better word, that we should have gotten off our chest a lot earlier and a lot sooner so that we can start healing again. And it's hard sometimes just to be honest with people and say, you know what, this is what I did and never should have done it. And as a result, you know, bad things happen. Because we like to cover things. We want to sweep things under the rug. We want to hide things, right? But I believe God honors honesty. And I believe there's healing in honesty. And if we're going to talk about failing and feeling like a failure, I have struggled with that. It has been a battle for me, and not just over the last couple of years, but I'm talking about 40 years back. I'm in my 50s now, just this constant battle of feeling like a failure. But 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I was fired as a pastor of a church that I loved like no other. Like I loved like no other, and still do to this day. But I put my board and my staff in a position they never should have been in. And they had to make a call. And I hold no ill will against them, nor should I. But knowing that you're responsible for hurting people that you love and that loved you is a pain and a guilt that I would wish on no one. And feeling like a failure every day of your life is not easy. It's a torment. It's a battle like nothing else. And if you're facing or fighting that same battle today, it's not easy. But I will tell you that God is faithful, that He loves you, that He will come to you by His Spirit, by His Word, in different ways, and let you know it's okay. It's okay. God forgives. He lets it go. You know, aren't you thankful that God doesn't bring things back up? What if, stay with me for a second, what if when Jesus went to Simon Peter, right after the resurrection, what if Jesus had gone to Peter and he said, hey man, I want to talk with you for a minute. First of all, I know what you did. I told you were going to do that, but you didn't believe me, but you did it anyway. What if Jesus would have said, and I've got a real problem with this, because you didn't listen to me. You hurt people. You tarnished your witness and all the work you had done leading up to this, Peter. Good job. But what if Jesus had just slammed him? What if Jesus had said, you know what, we're done here. I just wanted to come let you know we're done. You'll never minister again. I'm never going to use you again. And I was a mistake even calling out to you that day that I saw you fishing. I never should have done that. What if Jesus just would have laid him out? But He didn't. So why do we sometimes feel like that's the way the Lord sees us because of things we've done, right? We think the Lord's got to hate me. The Lord can't love me. The Lord will never use me. The Lord will never forgive me. And these are battles that have all gone through my mind. So I know what I'm talking about here. And we just put these in a loop and we just run them through every day. We allow the devil to get in our heads and go, yeah, that's right, man. You're nothing. You're miserable. You're a disgrace. You know, the Lord doesn't love you anymore. God will never forgive you. You have no future. And we will start to believe that for some reason before we believe the Word of God, which says that God forgives and He loves us and He's merciful and He's patient. So if you have failed in some things in your life, okay. So what? It's behind you. Get up. Get moving again. Quit laying there in a bed of misery, beating yourself up, thinking you're worthless, thinking that you have no future. There's no purpose for your life at all. Get back up. Follow the Lord. He's waiting on you. Take Him by the hand and get your walk back on. Get going again. Because I believe, you always hear, well, your best days are ahead of you. And I think that can become a bit cliche, and we get a little numb to that. Okay, yeah, whatever, everybody says that. But in Peter's case, it was true. So why couldn't it be true in yours? And I don't know who I'm talking to today. If you know somebody that's down or discouraged, help me get this video out. Share it, send it to somebody. Let them know if they're feeling like a failure, you're not. You're not. That's a lie, a trap, and a trick of the devil. You're not. You're the apple of God's eye. And he loves you with an everlasting love. And he's quick to forgive. He's abundant in mercy. And his plan for your life has not changed. He still loves you. And it's going to be all right. Hey guys, listen, I appreciate you taking time on a beautiful Sunday. It's a little humid, a little swampy today down here in Central Florida. But I love you guys. I can't thank you enough for watching. And you guys have a great week, okay? Share this video. Remember, if you've failed, that's not final. It's an opportunity to get up and show the world that God's not done, that God still has a plan, right? You are not a failure. I love you guys. We'll see you soon.